Hey, new video dropped. So yeah, as you probably already know, I tend to make YouTube videos about Touhou characters, and more specifically, either talk about a certain group of characters, or just talk about one specific Touhou that is extremely awesome and cool. And today is nothing different, as I will be talking about niche Touhou characters. I've had this idea for a while now, just wasn't sure how I wanted to execute it. Also, I would like to clarify what I mean by niche. To me, a niche Touhou character is one that A. Doesn't have any official artwork, meaning they do not have an official design. B. If they did make an appearance, it was in a very small way. C. Generally speaking, they have almost no official text. Also, I would like to put it out there, I won't be mentioning anything PC-98 related. Additionally, a majority of these characters are fairly important to the lore, so it's not like I'm going to put Blimbo the Harkus on this list. No, some of these characters are borderline like the most important characters to the lore. Well, only a couple of them, but I'm guessing that people interested in Touhou lore will with no doubt know of these guys. But if you're new, then you might learn something that can interest you. Also, 19 times out of 20, I use official artwork for my videos, seeing as I want to make my content as canonically correct as humanly possible. But for this one is impossible, seeing as these characters do not have an official design. So for the purpose of this video, I will be using fanart, and obviously credits to those artists in the description. And without further ado, let's start the Touhou. I want to start off with a character that will pretty well describe what sort of characters will appear in this video. And also, I feel like people will know of him. So you guys like Yomu a lot, because she's cute, because she's cool, and she's generally speaking an honest girl. And this character I feel like kind of feeds off of Yomu's hype. And of course, I'm talking about Yoki Kompaku. Yoki Kompaku has had only 2 real mentions in the entirety of Touhou, and honestly, it's difficult to say that these are 2 mentions when they're basically from the same thing. The first time Yoki was mentioned was 19 years ago in Touhou 7 Yomu Omake. He was also quickly mentioned in Yuiko's Omake from Touhou 7. And from these 2 places, we got like 3 or 4 lines of text. So yeah, the info on Yoki is pretty barren, but that is the trend of these characters I will be talking about. So originally, he was the gardener of Hakugyokuro, potentially present at the stealing of the Saigyo Ayakashi, although I do doubt it. He was also the master of Yomu, and one extremely interesting thing I couldn't find anyone talking about is the fact that after making Yomu his successor, he became a hermit, which is super interesting to me, seeing as the first time we actually heard about hermits in the Touhou project, which means that before Touhou 13, before Wild and Horned Hermit, Zune already had the idea for hermits, and honestly, that's really cool to me. Since he's presumably still alive, there is a possibility for him to appear in the future, although I do think that if he were to appear, he would have already, so don't get your hopes up. And continuing the trend of characters that kind of matter and are from Perfect Cherry Blossom, next up is Layla Prismriver. Similarly to Yoki, Layla too has only 2 mentions in the entirety of Touhou, although in her case, her 2 mentions differ in origin. First one is from Touhou 7 Prismriver Sisters Omake, and the other was from one of Zune's emails. Okay, so the story of Layla goes something like this. Long time ago, in the outside world, there was a noble named Count Prismriver. He had 4 daughters whom he cherished. After a tragic accident involving a magical item from Gensokyo, the mansion collapsed. After the collapse, all 4 sisters started going their separate paths, with Layla staying in the mansion because of her inability to abandon the memories of her home. Because of the magic item, she gained the ability to conjure poltergeists. And with that, she created poltergeists with the appearances of her sisters. After that, they vanished alongside the mansion. Following that, they started living in Gensokyo, even though Layla had a hard time living there. Because of the illusionary sisters, her remaining life was good. After her passing, the poltergeists didn't disappear, so the Prismrivers we know and love today aren't the original ones. Those are just the poltergeist versions that Layla made with her ability. It's pretty interesting because the whole existence of Layla is basically just the 3 Prismrivers backstory. Also, it's pretty funny how we have 2 groups of music-related sisters but aren't connected by blood. And that about wraps things up. Seeing as Layla is known to be deceased, I doubt we will ever see her again, although it will be extremely cool to see her mentioned once more. So I previously mentioned that these characters are supposed to be somewhat important to the lore, and yet I've mentioned, I guess you could say, very random characters, with Yoki being debatably important, depending if he was present during Yuiko's suicide. But enough with the goons. Now I've got someone that's comparatively very important, and that being Myouren Hijiri. Myouren Hijiri, the younger brother of Myouren Hijiri, was a very powerful monk, known to have had used his Buddhist powers for the good of humans, notably curing the sick in very remote places. Even though Myouren was the younger of the siblings, he was proficient enough in Buddhist magic to have taught his older sister how to use it for herself. It most likely was the beginning of her becoming a magician, seeing as after learning from Myouren, she regained her youth and stopped aging. But Myouren was still human, so eventually he died, before Myouren did. After that, she started fearing death greatly. Ultimately, the temple under Myouren was named after Myouren. So that's basically it for Myouren. Not much else is known about this guy, and honestly, it's a bit annoying seeing as he was important enough to have had a temple named after him. Similarly to others, his mentions are few and far between, Byakren's Omake text, and also there was an interview with Zun in which he was shortly mentioned. Nothing major in terms of lore came out of it. Similarly to Layla, he is known to be deceased, so I highly doubt we will ever see him again. It would also make little sense if he would return, seeing as his death was quite major for Byakren. I'm not sure if any of you guys remember, but a couple months ago, I made a video talking about Lunarians in Touhou. Personally, I really liked how it turned out, even though the audio quality is in fact lacking, seeing as it was the first video I ever made. But the important thing about that video is that they did in fact mention all Lunarians that are a thing in Touhou, which included characters that are to some degree niche. I like the idea of repeating myself, but I feel like these two characters I'm about to mention are pretty important and a good addition to the video. First one being Chang'e. Chang'e is most likely the most popular character in this video, seeing as she rose in popularity thanks to Junko existing. She is a Lunarian goddess imprisoned in the lunar capital for drinking the Hore elixir. She is known to be the person responsible for the existence of moon rabbits. It's unknown what's the deal with moon rabbits, but what we do know is that she is the mistress of all of them, which makes her extremely important to the Lunarians, and might be the reason as to why she is imprisoned on the moon and not exiled to Earth like Kaguya. There is a possibility that her being on the moon is crucial to the rabbits. Also, one very interesting thing about Chang'e is that she has a husband named Hoi. He's the guy responsible for killing Junko's son, shooting down Sons of Hell, and I guess by extension causing the events of LK. Chang'e was first mentioned in Silent Sinner and Blue, and then later on mentioned in Touhou 15. Okay, so surely Chang'e has to make an appearance someday. She's an extremely important character to the lore and has been mentioned almost 15 years ago. Normally, that doesn't matter, characters are mentioned and then later forgotten, but with her it's different. She's important enough to basically be the whole reason as to why Touhou 15 happened. I'm not sure if she will ever make an official appearance, but honestly, I would be extremely disappointed if that never happened. The other Lunarian character that I wanted to mention is Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi is a god of the moon and the person responsible for the existence of the Lunarians and the lunar capital. His story goes something like this. Long ago, there was a sage on Earth that found out that Earth was stained in impurity. Impurity being the thing that steals life from living things, making them able to die. He wanted to do something about it, and ultimately he left Earth with his family and his most trusted companions, one of them being Eren, and started a civilization on the moon that is now known as the lunar capital. We're not sure if he's truly a god or just a regular Lunarian, but if you're curious about what's the deal with the Lunarians, then you might want to check out one of my older videos, in which I explained what the Lunarians truly are, and also did some theorizing about their species. But back on track. To me, it's extremely frustrating that we know almost nothing about Tsukuyomi. We heard his backstory back in Cage Lunatic Renegade, but that's basically it. But like I said prior, Tsukuyomi might be one of the most important characters even without making an appearance. Let me explain. Since he started the lunar capital, he is responsible for everything that happened thanks to its existing. According to Kaguya, the whole concept of yokai originates from the moon, meaning that there is a possibility of yokai not existing if Tsukuyomi never came to the moon and became his god. Sadly, I don't think that Tsukuyomi will ever make an appearance. I feel like for that to happen, we would have to see Chang'e first, and even her appearance I doubt. But if it ever comes to it, and they both make an appearance, I will be extremely happy. Lunarians are my favorite part of Touhou, and I would love for them to get more and more exciting lore. Tsukuyomi would also probably become my favorite Touhou character. I already adore him quite a bit, even without him making an appearance. And the last character I wanted to mention, which is also my second favorite of this group, is the Tenma. The Tenma is a very enigmatic character, and out of all of these characters, has the least information available about them. I'm going to put it out there, before I get my ass blasted in the comments. I don't know what the gender of the Tenma is, so I'm going to refer to it as they. The amount of information is so scarce that we don't even know what their gender is, but enough of the tomfoolery. The Tenma is the chief of all Tengu, and also probably the most important person in the entirety of the Yokai Mountain. We can argue if it's the Tenma or Kaneko, but I like putting them at basically equal in terms of influence over the Yokai Mountain. They are often confused to be the same as Great Tengu, which is not the case. There are surprisingly a lot of different types of Tengu, so I get the confusion. And honestly, that's about it. Like I said prior, we know almost nothing about them, but what keeps me enthusiastic about them making an appearance is that Megumu, the only great Tengu that we know of, recently made an appearance, which leads me to believe that Zune is preparing us for the reveal of the Tenma. And if that ever happens, I'm going to be immensely happy with it. So yeah, that's about it. There are obviously more characters that could be classified as niche. I just picked the most interesting cases. I don't think there's anyone in particular that I missed that could be extremely important and or interesting. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for watching, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.